Hatchful, and I am co-founder of a fintech company called Bloom Impact. I'm also a design thinking practitioner and have been involved with the design thinking Ghana conferences for over, I think, 3 years now. This morning we were reminded that, you know, design thinking at its core is about breaking out of the boxes, sometimes seen, sometimes unseen, that kind of dictate our lives and how we operate as people. Today we're meeting online because the kind of prevailing health epidemic has forced us to revisit the question of what is a conference, right? And more importantly, it has forced us to become very creative in how we deal with problems that arise in different spheres of our lives. It's kind of a morbid example, but in a lot of ways, this is what design thinking is asking of us on a daily basis. As we come across different problems and different issues that we need to solve, design thinking asks us to kind of reevaluate the assumptions that we hold. Now, you know, kind of hosting a conference online has, you know, complications to it, but it's not a terribly complex problem. The question still remains, you know, how do we use design thinking to solve really complex problems? For example, there's a rationale to kind of create vaccines, right, to deal with the COVID-19 situation. Now, once we have a vaccine, we have to start thinking about how do we make sure everybody has access to it? How do we make sure that everybody in some way or form takes it? Because as we know with this particular disease, we can't really leave people behind, otherwise we will be defeated. So the question still remains, how do we actually answer these really complex problems using design thinking? How do we answer problems that have to do with scale, working? And this is sort of the thought or the question that we want to take into this afternoon session. And I'm very, very delighted to introduce you to Richard Perez. I only recently met Richard, but I absolutely love him because he used to work for a company that's called XYZ Design. He was a director and partner there. And I think that's probably the most amazing name anybody can give to a company. But apart from that, more recently, Richard is the founder of the Hasselplattner D School in Cape Town. For those of you who are involved in design thinking or who are coming into design thinking, you'll be familiar with the D School. It started out in Stanford. There's one out in Potsdam, and these are sort of the centers of excellence for design thinking. So Richard founded one in Cape Town, the first in Africa, and the only one affiliated with the original D schools. And there he's kind of leading the work on, you know, using design thinking to really bring innovation to different aspects of life and community, but not in sort of, you know, typical sort of one-off projects, but in a sort of very systemic, at scale manner. And today he's going to speak to us about what he's titled Reframing Design Thinking for Scale. And again, I love that title because what it speaks to is the fact that as design thinkers, we eat our own food, our own dog food. You know, he's talking about, you know, how we reframe design thinking, which is a tool, a process, a method, a way of life for some of us to address these problems at scale. Without much ado, I will let Richard take over. He could probably introduce himself better than I have, but I'll let him take over and give us the keynote. Thank you.
Just before that, my screen, my mouse is stuck, so I can't stop the screen share. Let me figure that out in a moment.
Sure.
I don't know what to do. Richard, can you try to share your screen?
Shall I? Let me try and see if I can override from my side. Hold on.
Yeah.
How's that?
It shows him as presenting, but Garding is still on.
Oh man. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Awesome.
So,
can you see my? You can see my screen now.
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me just quickly call up the chat box. I've got that here. Excellent. David, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you and welcome to everybody. I hope you enjoyed your session this morning. I managed to sit in Arn's presentation, and very inspiring. I think from the keynote that I'm going to present is going to be a little bit more academic, maybe a little bit more technical, getting into some of the weeds of how do we actually do this, and really get people to change the way they think and move the needle in some ways. But it truly is a privilege to be here, and great to be able to reach out and keep building these networks across Africa. I think one of the key focuses for us as a D school, although we're based all the way down in Cape Town, we really are wanting to see how we can move and scale this across the African continent, and specifically look at the different contexts of the different countries and start to build partnerships. So great to be here and great to be able to share some of the work that we're doing down in Cape Town. I've got a couple of slides I'm going to go through, but really would love to get into some of the discussions at the end. So please feel free to drop any questions in the chat, and we can pick them up at the end and go back to a couple of the slides if need be. So a little bit of background. So we're based down in Cape Town, right in the tip of Africa. Pretty much this is what it looks like today. It's a lovely spring day, so we've had a lot of good rain over the last couple of weeks, which has been great for us because we've had some really bad droughts over the last 2 years. And as a D school, we follow a similar model to the other D schools around the world. We have an academic host, which is the University of Cape Town, a very traditional university, 26,000 students, around about 5,000 staff members, with traditional faculties: commerce, engineering, health science, humanities, law, and science. And as you can imagine, coming into the world of design thinking, you first thing would say, well, where do we fit? Where do they put us as a school of design thinking? And fortunately, we actually exist in a more transversal faculty, which is not on this list, but it's a faculty that cuts across all these 6 main faculties, which is very crucial for us because, as you know, design thinking is about leveraging the diversity in the room and the different perspectives. So it's very important that we don't get lost into one of the silos of the traditional university. As David mentioned, we're one of 3 D schools funded by the Hasser-Plattner Foundation. The original one in Stanford, in Palo Alto, San Francisco. In the States, started in 2005, around about 2007, 2008. The School of Design Thinking, the Hasser-Plattner Institute in Germany, was opened, and we're very fortunate to be a 3rd cousin in the family, based down at the University of Cape Town, with primarily a focus looking at the African continent to say what could design thinking be in our context, in an African context, and really start to build, I think, a body of work and a body of evidence suited for our specific context. Design thinking, although it was maybe popularized in the States and it's practiced globally, from our experience, Africa has a very, very different, can have a very different approach to it and actually add a lot of uniqueness to it. And Gordon and I have actually been involved in a few projects over the last year, so it's great to sort of start collaborating across the borders. The focus of, as I mentioned, is for us to sort of be a nexus, a center of excellence, and moving more into the African continent and doing projects and research as we grow. We've only been around for about 4 years now, so it's still early days, but very much focused on wanting to build a center of excellence around the practice and research of design thinking as a driver of new outcomes and innovation. We're very fortunate as well to be in the process of building a dedicated facility at the university, purely dedicated to the teaching and learning of design thinking. We're going to be starting to break ground next year. And this is really, I think, going to put design thinking onto the map. Once again, very fortunate to have received funding from the Platinum Foundation. But this is the facility on the middle campus of the university. And I really think having a physical presence like this really will elevate design thinking beyond the abstract and beyond just something that people feel is a nice to have, or is something that's perhaps more attuned to sort of more the creative mindset. This is really making a statement that design thinking must be seen as a discipline and something that must be embedded across the board of all the faculties. In fact, every student, the Vice Chancellor's vision for 2030 is that every student that graduates from the university, all 25,000, should be exposed to some level of design thinking as a graduate attribute, which is really encouraging. And really sort of, I guess, the reason for my topic is how do we do that? It's all very well to teach and train on these sort of small classes, online, offline, but how do we actually scale it so that everybody can get access and really build this in as an attribute that one should have, not only as a graduate, but just in life. So coming to the topic of my my keynote, reframing design thinking for scale. Since the start of the D School, at least down in Cape Town, we have been following quite a traditional approach to teaching design thinking. And a lot of it is modeled off the very traditional way design was taught at art colleges around the world. Traditional art colleges like the Royal College of Art and Parsons, the New School in New York, traditionally teaching designers, small classes of designers, those that were perhaps more attuned to a creative mindset, that decided that they wanted to go into a study where they could unlock that creativity. But a huge portion of us would go off into different directions, and perhaps more into the science, more into the sciences, the maths, law, commerce, etc. Over time, we have found design thinking starting to be taught a lot more at business schools now. So it is beginning to scale into sort of what I would refer as non-traditional spaces, that you don't have to go to an art college or design college to be taught design thinking. You can actually go and get that education at business school. And it was actually quite interesting. I was first, my background is engineering and design, but I was actually introduced to the term design thinking at business school. And I found that very interesting, that I had studied design, I'd practiced design. As David said, I was a partner in a design consultancy, and nobody had ever mentioned the word design thinking to me. But there we were practicing it, exposing our clients to it. But it took a business school to frame it and help step it across that threshold, really, to get it into the non-traditional spaces. So that was a critical point in the growth of the design thinking training as we currently see it today. So traditionally, as I mentioned, the design thinking has been taught in small groups, teams of teams. This is the Hasse-Plattner Institute in Germany. This is the D School at Stanford University. So, reasonably small classes, a number of coaches present in the classes helping to guide the students, but really difficult to break through the barrier of sort of 20 classes of 20 or 30. And this is very much a mode which we've adopted when we started at the school at the University of Cape Town, working with postgraduate students and undergraduate students in teaching and learning. And then, as you could imagine, about 6 months ago, 5-6 months ago, this little thing arrived in our lives. It's just one of the many artistic renderings of what COVID could look like, but really got us thinking that, wait a minute, is there perhaps a different way of doing what we were doing? And for us to almost stop and reframe this mode, this pedagogy of the way we teach, especially if we want to scale it across different faculties, scale it out into industry. What is it that we really need to do? Because yes, we can teach people in small classes, But really, where we are now with COVID, with the uncertainty, with this world of VUCA, this is actually something everybody needs to be exposed to. And that really got us thinking. So the questions we asked ourselves about 6 months ago was, what is it that we are really teaching in our classes, in our programs? And how should we maybe be teaching this? Is there perhaps a different way of teaching it? And all started to step into space where we actually started to disrupt ourselves a bit. And then this concept of technology, how do we leverage it? I think over the last 6 months, we've all rushed into various technology platforms. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But those platforms existed before COVID arrived, and we didn't really use them. And why didn't we use them? Were they not quite adequate? Did they not quite fulfill the need for the type of teaching that we want to do? And are we now finding ourselves perhaps in a space where we are using this technology, but to the detriment of actually teaching design in the way that it should be ideally taught? So really looking at what is the role that technology can play to ensure that we remain focused on what we need to teach, but still leverage technology to scale it. So on the first topic around what is it that we are really teaching people? And Arne touched on a number of concepts this morning, and at a very sort of philosophical level, what we are needing to try and achieve, and the mindset that we're trying to achieve. And at the D School, because we work with a lot of academic programs, we really have to bring in a lot of the academic work that we do into those, so that from a pedagogy and teaching perspective, we really can align ourselves with other curriculum and make sure that academically what we teach is rigorous enough for them. So going back to the D School days at Stanford, that's for us where it really started. The guys, Tim Brown and David Kelly, starting the D School at Stanford with the sponsorship of the Hasselt-Plattner Foundation. And their first, I guess, realization of design thinking was it's not about the end object, that there's actually a process. And this was really the beginning of what I refer to as a democratization of design thinking, where it was starting to be packaged in a way that other people could engage with it, other non-designers, be it business, be it public sector, private sector. But actually people could start to engage now with this designerly thing, which traditionally was thought of maybe a black art or black trade, which was only found at art colleges. And the challenge of getting into an art college is you had to have already been assessed as a creative person. But they were basically advocating that we are all creative, and we all have the ability to be creative. And they talked a lot about unlocking creative confidence. And I absolutely do agree with that, and with what Arne was saying this morning, that we all have the ability to be creative. It's just a matter of finding the right environment to allow it to be unlocked, and allow us to practice it as human beings. It's one thing that AI and machine learning will not be able to take away from us, is our ability to imagine futures and to be creative, and that social aspect of what we do in that process. So I always frame design thinking as an evolution of the design process. It absolutely has its roots in design. And I often refer to the Danish design ladder as a key frame to help us understand what it is that we're actually trying to teach. And at the bottom of the ladder, I generally refer to those that have no appreciation of design. So they know that design exists, but they don't really appreciate it. They can't see it in their everyday life. The computer you're sitting in front of, the fact that the keyboard is being designed, the fonts on the keyboard are a certain height, the distance that the keyboard travels down until it snaps back up, all that has actually been designed by somebody, but nobody, a lot of people don't actually recognize that. As we move up the ladder, design is applied in some ways in more tangible ways, the things that we can interface with as human beings, but in some ways it also starts to get applied in a more abstract way. And as we go through the ladder up to the top, we start to move into a space where we actually talk about design as a way of thinking, as a cognition. And that's the essence of what we are trying to teach at the D School, is to really say that the real value of design is this approach, this way of thinking, this way of being. And the fact that it's a very good tool to solve a problem, and it brings in human-centered components to it, and it embraces ambiguity and failure. Those are great attributes, but really at the day, we are trying to teach people this way of thinking and this mindset, this learning mindset. So if you look at, when we start talking about scaling, then we say to ourselves, how do we scale? How do we attract? So people are attracted to design thinking for different reasons. And what we've seen at the D School is, if you've got people, it's all very well people that sign up for a course. It means they want to be there, they want to be in the space, they want to learn. But what about those that are not sure about it? What about those that come into the space and are a little bit apprehensive? How do we get them over that threshold so that once they start to see the light, we can really start to build on those mindsets? The critical thing is to get them into the space to start with. And that's what we've been working on quite hard at the D School. So we've been focusing to say, well, what are the reasons that people enter the world of design thinking? One of the key ones is around a challenge. People want to solve real problems. So they would come to a D School saying, I want to solve this problem and I need some help. They're not really interested in learning design thinking, but they need help to get from the problem statement to some sort of solution. The other area that we've noticed is that people are looking for process. They're looking for tools and methods. And this is often where you find a lot of people attending workshops because they're looking for tools, they're looking for structure, they're looking for methods. And absolutely, one can provide that in a design thinking environment. But what we really want to teach them at the end of the day, if we really want to make a difference, is that we need to shift the mindset, the individual mindset. So it's fine if they come through these other sort of doors, but really what we want to do is get them into the space that we are starting to build on their mindset. And that's about changing the way they think and they behave in the space and beyond. So that's where our real focus is. And when we look at scaling, we say that's what we mustn't lose. We mustn't lose the fact that we are trying to build mindset. And we build that mindset at the D School through a process. We start at the bottom with tools and methods, absolutely. We turn that into a practice, into an experience, but we really want to start building the mindset and values. And that's where we want to land. No matter what design thinking program we will expose a student to, be it a 2-hour introduction or a 24-day deep immersion. We want to get them into that mindset space as quickly as possible, because that's really where the difference is going to be made. Once they're there, they have the conduct, what we call that creative confidence, to develop their own tools, to develop their own practices, and really be able to take control and ownership. So when we talk about mindsets, these are the critical ones that we really focus on at the D School. It's a concept of being visual, showing the value of being visual. Thinking deeply, really getting people to engage and to reflect on the problem. Giving them space to explore, showing them the importance of exploring a problem space. We're not here to solve a problem, we're here to explore a problem in the early phases. To be action-orientated, critical part of the journey. And to be human-centered, to go out there and understand what are the real needs. Let's embed this in real needs as opposed to what we just feel. To be collaborative, very, very important component. And I'll talk a little bit about that around the technology and the challenges around bringing true collaboration out. Navigating uncertainty, Arne mentioned that this morning as well, the sort of fear of failure. Go out and explore and try things you haven't tried before. Mindful of a process. Yes, there is a process, there is structure. That's one of the big reasons a lot of organizations are turning to design thinking, because it does bring what they call method to the madness. And then the concept of embracing failure, that it's a critical part of the journey. At the Royal College of Art, they have developed, I don't know if they're still running it, but they actually develop a course for their students that in order to pass the course, you have to fail the course. Now that's a unique concept. You're not going to find that in a traditional teaching and learning environment, but you'll find it in the art colleges because they realize that it's an important mindset to build. So how do you take that out of an art college and bring it into the world of engineering or commerce or into other disciplines which perhaps would not think for one moment that that's actually something that they would like to promote in their studies? And then the concept of being context aware, the systems view. So in our quest to scale design thinking, for us, it's the critical component of that is that we mustn't lose the focus of what we're trying to do, which is trying to teach mindset. And what we've been experimenting with is that you can teach mindset without having to have people in a class. And so it suddenly opens up all different ways of teaching and pedagogy. You don't have to do a design thinking workshop in order to teach these. And it really starts to pry open the opportunity of how we can start to build this mindset beyond just a small class. So how are we, or how should we be teaching? So if we understand that these are the key mindsets that we're wanting to land with our students and get them to practice. So we have the traditional face-to-face workshops that I talked about. There's a number of online, or what we call single individual journeys that people can go through. IDOU have a number of online programs, and there's many out there. If you go to Coursera, there are lots of design thinking. In fact, it's actually quite mind-boggling when you go online now with the number of design thinking programs that are available, and the hybrids, design thinking for innovation, managing innovation, design thinking, innovation through design, think, make, break, design-led strategy, design thinking for great. If you were somebody trying to come into this world, you're probably a bit confused. Like, what am I actually needing? And this is what we've got to be so careful of, is that we don't confuse the world out there, but also at the same time, we make sure that we are delivering quality teaching and learning experience, which are really addressing the core of what we're trying to change. I think the other area that we've looked at quite carefully is this concept of synchronous or asynchronous. How do we build asynchronous programs that can teach these mindsets, where people can go off on their own and their own time develop these mindsets? Not forgetting the importance of the asynchronous component, so the synchronous component of the teams and coming together and collaborating and sharing. So these are, I wouldn't profess to have the answers. It's really just, these are some of the areas that we've been exploring, and you know, we're hoping over the next year to keep experimenting. So we don't know yet what the answers are. We're just finding this opportunity now to really explore and experiment, and not assume that there's only one way to teach design thinking. So we actually ran a very interesting program with some of our students at the University of Cape Town. It was 130 third-year mechanical engineers we had to teach. We had 8 hours to teach them. It had to be in an online environment, and we had to minimize data usage. As you can appreciate, in the African continent, access to data, video conferencing, all these are very limited, especially with the students. So how do you create a design thinking learning experience where you can't use sort of the traditional tools that you'd like to? The design challenge that we pitched was actually focused around the SDGs, but specifically also around COVID. And we talked about redesigning the hand cleaning experience for children in a world where hygiene is of increasing significance and water resources are limited and children are easily distracted. So we had 8 hours with the students over a period of 2 weeks. And the team decided to use WhatsApp as the platform to minimize the data usage. So they did all the templates, all the completion of the templates was done on WhatsApp. And I just got an example on the right-hand side here of one of the solutions that came out of the team. So this was a team-based activity. So asynchronous environment, and the concept that the students came up with in this group was really to create these Play-Doh balls which kids would play with and work with their hands, and in the process it would clean their hands. And obviously it was a play environment, so that it would actually, the more they played with it, the more that their hands got cleaned. This experiment really showed us that you can really push design thinking to a different level, where very strict time restrictions, only 8 hours, it's not very much. There was a little bit of time that they might have done out of the study period as a team, but the core was 8 hours in a very restricted online environment. That we could actually get students into a very creative space. We could get them to collaborate. We could get them to build prototypes. We could get them to visualize what they were wanting to achieve. And we felt this was very promising, and the team are going to start building onto this and really sort of stretch some of these learnings even further. And it could be very exciting in the sense of then taking this into a completely different environment where you don't even have to be at the university. This is something you can do on a mobile phone with a bunch of friends, and you could actually get into an asynchronous self-taught mode, which would be very, very exciting. The last big area of thinking that we went through was, what about technology? Right at the beginning of COVID, the Design Thinking Alliance, the GDTA, and you're welcome to Google them. They're an alliance of academic institutions around the world who come together and are just really sharing knowledge, and have been for the last 2 to 3 years. They did a survey with their members just before, or just after lockdown started, to sort of understand what technologies have people, what technologies are people adopting in order to continue teaching design thinking. And I'm just going to zoom in. This slide is actually on their site. I'm more than happy also to share these slides through Gordon, so feel free to have another look at them then. But the interesting one was the collaboration component, which is in the center, and to see the types of tools that a lot of organizations have moved to. And some of them be probably quite familiar. We've got Miro and Mural, Google Jamboard, Prezi, Stormboard. And what's really interesting for us is that all these technologies and platforms existed before COVID. So, but we didn't really use them. And the question is, why didn't we use them? Was it because we didn't feel we needed to scale? Was it because we felt that these technologies fit a component of what we're trying to do, but not everything? And that then posed the question that we need to be very careful that when we use these platforms, what are we losing in the teaching process? What are we losing in the experience that we're trying to create? Arne mentioned these sort of approach, these mindsets this morning, but we talk about them, but are we perhaps through technology cutting ourselves short? And those that are now coming into this world perhaps aren't going to get that exposure and build that confidence that they need to build to truly practice this way of thinking and working. So we've started to look a little bit around the limitations of these programs. We are ourselves using Miro and Mural, and already we're finding that prototyping and co-creation is a very limiting factor. You probably, for those that have done Zoom and Mural and Miro workshops, probably very familiar with this sort of environment where you do have a collaborative space. It's a two-dimensional space, posted stickers, you can do a little bit of drawing. There's a little bit of collaboration, human-centeredness, but you need the technology, you need the bandwidth, and even that, to that point, it's still relatively limiting. It's much better than just a webinar or even what I'm doing now. You know, I would love to rather be doing this in a far more interactive way, but it's by no means reaches the same objectives that we would like to achieve in the traditional way of teaching. So what we feel needs to happen is we need to start to look beyond what exists within the design fraternity and really start to look at where are technologies that sit outside this space that we can maybe start to bring in. This is an image, it's 6 years old, 2014, where a doctor is operating, this is in China, a doctor is operating on a patient using a robot, and the patient is a bone fracture, but the patient's 2,000 miles away. So here he is actually physically building something 2,000 miles away. So the technology exists, but we're not using it yet in the teaching and training of design thinking. Ford are starting to look at, towards the end of last year, at bringing in virtual reality to create three-dimensional design with colleagues from around the world. So it's very much an emerging technology. Industry are starting to use it, but it's really something that we need to start bringing into the teaching and learning of design thinking as well. If we truly are going to be collaborative at a global scale in an asynchronous way and using technology, we absolutely must bring these technologies into the way we teach. And people that are learning design thinking must become comfortable with them as well. Another one which is reasonably developed is in architecture. Autodesk have the software called Revit, where the mechanical engineers and the electrical engineers and the architects, everybody's working on the same model simultaneously. So everybody's co-creating a little component, but at the end of the day, we're going to land up with a co-created final model. Very powerful piece of software, but as you can imagine, barriers to entry incredibly high, very expensive to run. And I wouldn't say you need a PhD to run it, but you need many years of experience to be able to be comfortable and proficient in that environment. So the concepts of technology are there. The thing is, how do we bring it down to the level where people that we want to teach design thinking to can engage with it? We don't have that answer yet, but it's certainly something we feel that we should start to ask. Specifically in the African context, where people have very limited access to resources, but yet probably can benefit the most from this way of thinking. So coming back in summary, and then we can get into a little bit of a chat. So the focus areas for scaling design thinking that we really want to apply our minds to going forward is this concept of focusing on how best to develop mindset and not lose that critical component. Focus on the asynchronous format and the platforms. So keep pushing that barrier, keep pushing ourselves, rather than saying to ourselves, no, this can't be done outside the classroom, saying, how can it be done? How can we do this at scale across the world in a way which is not going to lose the attributes that we're trying to teach? Push ourselves. We ourselves must just, I think as David said, we must disrupt ourselves, and perhaps COVID is the time for us to disrupt ourselves before we go any further. And then lastly, this use of technology rather as an enabler and not a driver. I think jumping onto these technologies, yes, they're great, they're short term, but they mustn't drive the way we teach design thinking. We really need to start to maybe perhaps develop our own technology based on what we feel the need is, and almost follow a design thinking approach in order to discover what that might be. And that was the end of my very fast whip through and slides. I must apologize for the slide deck. It's not typically the way I like to expose people to our thinking, the work we do, but it's I thought there's a lot of academic stuff behind what we're trying to do here. So I thought I'd just sort of land some of the key details, and hopefully we can get into a bit of a discussion now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Sorry, let me get my video back on here. Thank you very much. That was very interesting. One of the things I do is also teach a human-computer interaction class, and this is going to be the first semester I'm going to do that purely online. And so, for those of you not familiar, this is well, a very sort of basic description would be how you design technology so that people can use it as particularly different the points of interaction, so the interfaces that people use. So either if you're using a computer, or the different windows and stuff on there. If you're using a phone, the UI and all of that. And as Richard indicated, sort of being collaborative, collaboration is a big part of it. Being human-centered is a big part of it. And so this question of, okay, how do you then teach people how to adopt, inculcate these practices when everybody's going to be remote and
absolutely.
a lot of what you've highlighted is interesting. I'll definitely like to pick up on that with you maybe at a later time. But right now, what I'll do is just in case people have questions, I'll open up the floor. You can, I guess, either type it in or if you can ask to be unmuted so that you can speak.
I think just to build on David, while people are thinking of questions, just to build on what you said there, we've always, in some ways, prided ourselves that if you come into a design thinking workshop or space, there's very little technology. We really are tapping into our natural ability as humans to be creative. But with COVID, and in hindsight of where technology is going, one has to start to question that, to say, well, how do we actually now bring technology into that space? Because we can't stay in the dark ages teaching design thinking. We really need to embrace new technologies. But we've got to do it in such a way that it doesn't come to the detriment of what we're trying to teach.
Exactly. I mean, I've always been of the school that, as you said at the end, technology amplifies what's there. And so if the sort of the core practices and philosophies are not there and are not being worked on, then when you put the technology to it, it's going to be an issue. Let's see. I think there's. Is that a question? Yeah, a question from Chantal. Chantal asks, what are some social good or community projects that one can get involved in to help solve problems during using design thinking?
Yeah, great question. Based on the context that we find ourselves in, and particularly within Africa, we have a number of project partners that we work with. Both in the NGO space and the corporate space and government space. At the essence of most of these problems are quite complex sort of economic/social challenges. But we do quite a lot of work with NGOs where we invite them in to pitch their challenge to the students so that the students are working on a real world challenge. We've done work varying from youth development with UNICEF in Malawi around teenage pregnancy, all the way through to working with a homeless organization in Cape Town, where at the end of the day, they're trying to understand their own challenges a bit in the sense, the context that they are in, but also understanding what are the services that we should be offering, what are the interventions that we should be creating. Take, for example, the homelessness issue in Cape Town. You can use design thinking. We talk about in the design thinking process, and Arne mentioned this morning, the sort of double diamond. The first phase is really all about exploring the problem. We often jump too quickly into solution mode. That's how we're trained at university. That's how we train. That we get hired into organizations as experts to have answers. Walk into a meeting and somebody will expect you to have the answer because you're the engineer, or you're the accountant. What's the solution? The financial solution. But obviously in the design thinking process, we argue that it's very important to explore the problem. Not so much understand it, rather explore it. And bathe in it. And we work with a lot of organizations in the social space to help them actually understand their problems, the complexity of their problems using design thinking. Bringing in more, maybe perhaps a systems view, but then also looking at it from a human-centered perspective. So we teach them to hold the problem space before jumping into solution. And then when they do go into the solution space, we explain to them that a lot of the ideas that get generated will be hypotheses. There'll be ideas, experiments, and they must follow a journey or a process where we test these and test our assumptions and allow the solution to emerge over time. So a lot of the social organizations that we work with, the real value that they get out of design thinking is the process, is the structure that we can bring. They're the experts. They're the ones that know the space far better than we do. But we can bring structure and process. But then through that, build their capacity within their own organization from a mindset perspective. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the challenge is. As long as you frame it as a design problem, you can follow a design process to understand it and to explore it, and then to come up with some interventions into the system.
There's a question about, as you said, we have to democratize design thinking. It's something that everybody should be doing. You're set up in the university to be across multiple disciplines. There's a question about whether the integrity of this way of thinking gets diluted as other disciplines kind of hijack it and reinterpret it within their own sort of disciplines and understanding and sort of historical precedents that they have. Is that something that, as design thinkers, we should be worried about, or should handle that?
So, a little story behind that. So my background, I studied engineering, and then I did a master's in design at the Royal College of Art in London. And I was taught to be a designer and to be a professional designer. And I spent a lot of my time and my money doing that. And I felt that is something that I was very privileged to be exposed to, but I am now a designer. And anybody that hasn't been through that experience can't say that they are a designer because they haven't got a formal education. The beauty of design thinking is it's not actually trying to teach people to be professional designers. It's trying to teach people to see the world through a design mindset. You're still going to need professional designers and experts to come in and design the house, or design the PC board, or the product designer, or the architect. You're still going to need those professional technical designers. So the design profession, to start the conversation, the design profession feels very threatened with the design thinking community, because they really feel, first of all, that it is degrading the value of professional design, that suddenly you've got all these people, they call themselves design thinkers, who have perhaps a lot of them haven't had professional design experience. I believe that that's, first of all, okay. I do believe that at the end of the day, you are going to need professional designers, but also you're going to need those that can teach and train people in the mindset and thinking. And we often find, interestingly enough, when we train design thinking facilitators, we find it easier to take somebody that's very good at teaching and facilitating and teach them design than it is to take a designer and try and teach them to be a facilitator. So this explosion of design thinkers, we're very excited about, although one must still be quite careful of where have they trained, because there are so many programs out there. We've got to be so careful that doing a one-day workshop on design thinking doesn't make you necessarily a design thinking facilitator or necessarily a design thinker. It is embedded in the practice, and it does take time to master it, like any other design discipline. When we now, as in the design thinking fraternity, take it into other disciplines, that for me is massively exciting, because suddenly design can now play a role in law, it can play a role in finance, it can play a role in HR, it can play where all those places where design never got to because people associated with building a bridge or making a desk or designing a computer. Suddenly design can move into almost any discipline and have an impact. And so I actually welcome when design gets mixed, when we start mixing disciplines with design thinking. It just opens up so many more opportunities. And ideally at the end of the day, you're always going to need design. You're going to need process experts. You're going to need people that can come in and teach and train and guide. But there are certain levels in design thinking that really everybody should have, whether you're a lawyer or an accountant or an engineer.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just try and just have one more question, because I think we've just gone slightly over. But there's a question about getting leadership to adopt design thinking. And it could be either political leadership or sort of in an educational institution. The example given was within a university, so like a vice chancellor. But I would say even, you know, going down to sort of basic education levels. And how, you know, how do we address that? And then I'll tie it into a last point about, you know, we've talked a lot about technology here. This is from Nanayao. And his concern is about, well, how about the people in marginalized communities and villages? And if the idea is to really move design thinking, you know, outside, if you will, the academic walls and really into where people are living their lives, where action is taking place. How do we get our leaders to kind of start adopting design thinking? And then how do we also make sure that it's, if you will, inclusive, given that technology seems to be the only way to practice it now, but a lot of people are excluded from that medium.
Yeah. So on the leadership front, for my sins, I spent 3 years in local government working closely with the mayor in Cape Town, embedding a design-led approach to a lot of their programs and projects, as well as public participation processes. The critical thing is leadership. Absolutely. You can't do this in an organization unless you haven't got leadership buy-in. The key is how you get the leadership buy-in. And this is where the strategy we approached at the City of Cape Town is we deconstructed design thinking. So we took all those behaviors, the mindsets I talked about, we deconstructed and took out the design thinking jargon, and we reconstructed it in a public sector vocabulary. And so people started to understand how it fits into their world. So that's the absolute critical thing. You need to let go of the word design sometimes. You need to let go of all these words that you flash around to sort of oppress people, to make them think, to make them realize that you are coming from a very different space. You've often got to leave those behind and meet them with their language and their culture, and bring in design thinking in a very subtle way. That is how we've seen it. It's too disruptive to bring it in as a bolt-on or something extra. You really have to learn how to deconstruct it and reconstruct it in a way, and that's different for every organization and every leader and every form of leadership. And lastly, the question on getting it out of the academic space. So one of the critical things which we are focusing a lot on are skills of the future, and the importance of the World Economic Forum I work very close to this, and so does UNICEF, is what are the attributes that people need to have going into the future. And it's things like complex problem solving, collaboration, experimentation, creativity. And so we're actually just about to undertake a program at school level to bring this into schools, specifically to STEM subjects, so science, technology, engineering, and maths, to get this way of thinking in at schools, getting it out there into the communities. We shouldn't have to exist as a D school, ideally. If we were teaching this at the right level, then we wouldn't need to be at a higher education. If it was being taught at schools properly, then it would get carried through. So we've sort of come in at the middle. We're working up into corporates and into higher education, and also down into schools and into community. But ideally, I absolutely would agree that this is something that we must get down to community level, almost as a basic human right to be able to think like this, to have this sort of freedom of thought and to be creative, and to build more of an entrepreneurship mindset amongst us as people, specifically in the African continent, where we can't rely on the traditional job market to provide us with the type of work that we might like to follow.
All right. Thank you very much, Richard. This has been really engaging, and I think it's set the right tone for us. The groups go into the breakout rooms to kind of explore the different toolkits that can be applied, particularly in these what we call adverse moments of adversity. So thank you again. We greatly appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll get to see you in person in Ghana sometime soon, or this will get Africa wide, and we'll have a Cape Town one. I'll be rooting for that soon. So thank you very much, and I'll just hand over to Gordon now.
Great, thank you, David, and thanks everybody for their time.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. And I have to say also that this is to all the facilitators. The Google Slides design, we stole it from Richard. So he started working on these sort of tools very early, right when COVID hit. So thank you for that, Richard. Most appreciated. So we're going to get a short message from our sponsors, and then we will go into the breakout rooms.
The year is 2020, and while our cars aren't flying yet, the simple and convenient life we dreamed of is in full effect. In today's world, the core of every single product is convenience, but that makes a lot of fragments of convenience. Ayoba is the one place where every piece of life comes together. Work, business, social, entertainment, new opportunities, and more. The introduction of Ayoba to the MTN family is more than a business case. It affords the opportunity to be part of something African and authentic. Go to ayoba.me to download the app for free on your Android device and step into the future. Send and receive text and voice messages to all your contacts for free, while Ayoba's end-to-end encryption ensures that all your data is secure. Set up chat groups, share photos, videos, documents, and location updates. Make standard voice calls, send and receive payments via mobile money, and access all your favorite content all in the same app. Ayoba is undoubtedly the next big thing, and it's live on MTN. Download the Ayoba app for free today at ayoba.me and connect to your friends and family. Making Ayoba accessible is further proof that we're indeed good together, and we truly dare for you.
All right, so we got sponsorship from MTN, so we have to do what people normally call the needful. Very strange word. All right, so for the next segment, we're going into breakout rooms as per the rooms that you registered for, if you will. So breakout room 1 will be tools for gaining insights for proxy users when you can't reach your actual users. Breakout room 2, ideation in the unknown, using the right tools for efficient results. Breakout room 3, learning to construct a POV in uncertainty. Breakout room 4, tools for designing and testing new prototypes. Now, these breakout rooms represent a workshop series that we had when the lockdown started. We were thinking, how do we support entrepreneurs and others in these difficult times? And we learned a lot from these tools. And so the facilitators are going to share back lessons and do a demonstration on how they were able to work in those breakout rooms in the workshop, using some of the tools that we got from Richard as well. So I'm going to invite Ms. Abby to tell us a little bit about the breakout rooms. And whilst she comes on board, I just also want to say big thank you to David Hatchful for moderating that morning session. All right, Ms. Abby.
Hi. So we are going to go into our breakout rooms. You receive a prompt on your screen, which you would have to click to be able to join the breakout room. A point to note though is that you may not get the breakout room that you chose whilst you're registering, and we do apologize for that, but I'm sure you're still going to have an awesome time wherever you find yourself. In case you still don't want to be there, just come back to the main session and then we'll take you to the room that you would like to be. So I'm opening the breakout rooms now. Kindly look out for the prompt and click on it to join. So have fun. We'll be back in 20 minutes.
for us?
Sure, why not? So in the breakout room 1, we walk through the journey that a typical customer or somebody that's testing a product is taking through. I think what was most important for us was the fact that when you are in a constrained situation like COVID-19 has created, and you are not able to reach your ideal customer or product user, given that the user is at the heart and center when it comes to design thinking, you can use the proxy. And though the person may not be the ideal user, you can prep them. And once you have prepped them, they actually get into the mood and they are able to deliver sometimes beyond the expectations if you had dealt with what your ideal user may have been. Eugene walked us through some of the different options that we can use, including empathy mapping, as well as journey mapping, among others. Thank you.
It's wonderful, thank you. We'll do a quick round and then we'll come back and share some more. So let's go to the next room. So that will be, let's see.
Yes, that's room 2.
Yes, yes, go for it.
Over.
Paulina, go for it. Who's?
Okay, right. Okay, so in room 2, we practiced the ideation methods. We decided on the designated rooms, and we tried to figure out how to ideate for a hotel. So our user was a hotel who is experiencing dining skills. And in this pandemic, we're trying to help ideate solutions on how it can find ways around the situation. So there are some parts around the dreamer. Some were suggesting very crazy ideas as far as burning the hotel to claim insurance. We had the realist who would say that, no, this really will not work. And then we had the optimist or the critic who is saying that, look, this whole thing is a waste of time for all of us. Let's just sell the hotel or do something else. So these are some insights, and some participants shared that it's very crazy to think of it as burning the hotel, but also it sounds like something that could, when reversed, have a solution or something close to a solution for the situation. So yes, that's it for breakout room 2 on ideation in the unknown. Thank you.
It's wonderful. Coming up with crazy ideas and turning them around. Let's go to POV, the POV room. Is Mubarak with us, or Martha?
Yes. Yeah, Doc, yes, I'm here. Yeah, great. So, yeah, so we went through what we had before, which was in our toolkit program. We went through everything and then explained why we use that tool and how it also relates to this sort of current like whatever pandemic. And then the other thing was that we looked at an exercise. We looked at the exercises that we did in the toolkit program. And then we had one exercise where we had a statement, and then we asked the people on the call to look at it very well, and then be able to tell us what or which parts of the like statement is the user, which part is the need, and then which part is the insight. And so that's how we ended. And then we looked at whatever we went through the slides.
So any quick takeaways?
Yeah, so I think what we saw was that when we're going through the work, a lot of people, from seeing the statement that was there, tried to think beyond what they saw there. right? So it's said that, you know, someone who was trying to travel from point A to point B, so they were trying to assume who that person is. And I think I like the fact that they were thinking in that way. So they were trying to like figure out who exactly the kind of like person is, right? So that was one of the things that I think was very insightful.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go to prototypes.
Yes, Richard.
Okay, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Breakout Room 4. We did the tools for designing and testing prototypes for strategic insights. And during our session, we explained what this is and what is it's about. So we looked at, we broke it down to explain the fact that when you have a product or a service, you need to find a way of testing it to get insights. And to test it, you need to use the things like the horizontal building test space, where you use the user mapping, the journey mapping. Then you also look at the vertical aspect that has to deal with the canvas, that's the business model canvas. And based on that, you can develop your assumptions and your hypothesis. And this all comes together to help you develop a product that is viable for your market. We also looked at some examples from the previous session that we did, and we concluded with some of the insights you are likely to generate when you go through this process. So one of the things we identified is the fact that it helps you develop a feasible product or a viable product for a specific market, and it also helps you avoid avoid errors or wastage. So basically, that is it for this part. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard. And we also have to acknowledge your support for the conference with the Hoja Africa support and the volunteers and everything. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Most appreciated. All right, so we're going to open the floor and have a lot more discussion. We want people to make sure that, you know, the insights come out and so forth. But before we do that, I know Richard Perez has to leave, so we're going to ask him to say a few words, and then we'll hear from our sponsors very quickly, and then we'll have an open floor. So, Richard Perez.
Yeah, I'm muted. There we go. Thank you. Thanks, Gordon. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Great to hear some of your feedback. I think just a reflection from my side, it's so warming to see that this activity and all these people online here practicing and being involved in design thinking. I really do think it's something that can have a massive impact on this continent, and I'd really like to welcome sort of further collaboration, you know, through the Design Thinking Hub and things like that, and see how we can really start to build practice. I've tried to answer some of the questions that we didn't get to in the chat, so you might just scroll up, but I've tried to pick up some there. But from my side, really, thank you so much. I've sent the presentation through to Gordon, so you can disseminate it out there. But good luck in your rest of your travels, and hopefully we'll get to see each other. And next time I'm in Accra.
That's wonderful. We're looking forward to planes flying again at will, and doing a lot of this in person, even though we must take advantage of the technology as it exists and stretch it to do some of the things that COVID is opening our eyes to. And thank you for sort of nudging us in that direction and really helping us think about how we can use existing technology to do awesome things. I'm looking forward to being able to build modules with somebody remotely, right? Physical modules with somebody remotely. That would be mind-blowing. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely, yeah. If we can even just, I know Lego have got some interesting three-dimensional programs, but it's not collaborative. In fact,
Right.
you know, the closest I've come to it is maybe Minecraft. I don't know who here plays Minecraft, whose children here plays Minecraft.
I have Minecraft, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very collaborative, creative tool. Actually,
Right.
You can build the most amazing things.
Right.
So yeah, we just got to go out there and find it and adapt
There you
it.
go. Right. So maybe we might be moving on to Minecraft. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you
Pleasure.
again.
Thanks, guys.
See you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye. All right. So we're going to hear from Boadiwa from MTN. Boadiwa, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know how many minutes I have, but I'm here to talk about
You have a short period of time.
All right.
Maybe maximum 3, if that's okay.
Sure, that's okay. So I think during the session, there was a video that was played of Ayoba. I don't know how many of you have heard of it yet, but I just want to let you know what it's about, just throw a little more light on it. MTN is seeking to spearhead the first African super app, and that is Ayoba. It is not just an instant messaging app. It is a one-stop shop for a lot of the things you would do online. Currently, it is live in Ghana, and the good news is when you're on MTN, you can use the app for free. You can send messages to your contacts through Ayoba. And the unique thing about it is even if somebody is not in the app, you could still send them a message and they'll receive it as an SMS. And they can respond and you can have your chat going without messing up your experience. And so you would just want to encourage your other contacts to get the app so that you can chat on MTN for free. That is, you just need an internet connection. You don't need to have an active data bundle, and then you can chat away. All other networks can also use the app. The only difference is their network charges will apply. Currently, another thing on Ayoba, apart from the chat functionality, is that you have access to content, very rich content. And I talked about us spearheading the African experience. There's a lot of rich local content in there. We recently launched the Music Time micro app in Ayoba, which has currently about 12 playlists of your favorite Ghanaian artists across all genres. So right in the Ayoba app, you can go there and enjoy music from Sarkodie, from Jumet to Stonebwoy, at no data cost. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. There's also games in the app that you can play, and also without the need to have an active data bundle. There are many more channels, but because of the time I have, this is what I'll speak about now. Another exciting feature in Ayoba is that whilst chatting with somebody, you can actually send them money through mobile money. All you need to do is in your chat window, you go to the attachment side, and then just like in other chat apps, the attachment, you have the Momo option. You just enter the amount and send. I mean, it's the simplest way to actually send money to your contacts. So if we don't have the app yet, I would entreat everybody to download and have the experience and give us feedback as well. So that is it for Ayoba. Go to ayoba.me, ayoba.me to download the app with no data costs, with free data. And then you can also have it on the Play Store. So that is it about Ayoba. I hope you all get to try your hands on it and spread the word and have the great experience we are promising to offer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boadiwa. Thank you to MTN for supporting us on this conference. We were able to provide data to our volunteers, our facilitators, and we'll actually be doing some, we will be giving out some data units later to some of our most active participants on social media, and we'll be sure to tag the Ayoba hashtags and so forth as well. All right.
Sure.
So yeah. All right. Thank you, Boadiwa, and thank you, David, as well. David Na, the innovation manager for MTN, on the call. So yeah. No, David. Yeah. David,
I'm just saying thank you. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Most appreciated. So, you know, we're almost out of time, but we always normally want to make sure that we get some of the very rich insights. So we wanted to, you know, bring it up here so that people who need to jump off, but it would be great to get a few perspectives, things that really drove it home for you, to hear from some of our facilitators as well, our volunteers who are busy capturing social media, some of our participants. What do you see as the hope for design thinking and for collaborative work, even in these difficult times? So you can just use a hand raise button and speak. And whilst people do that, maybe we can hear from some of the facilitators. Anybody can just use a hand raise button and speak. But whilst people warm up to that, maybe we can take a few comments from some of the facilitators. Anything new that came up? Yes, Isaac.
Yeah, Doc, thank you. Mine is a question. I wish to find out, just as Richard from Cape Town shared with us, that the VC has a wish that they expose all the students to DT in their university. I wish to also find out, with Ashesi and other universities, how is it done? Is it like a core course for all students who are in the university, or how is it done? Because I'm in university staff and I wish to know how it's done elsewhere.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. At Ashesi, for about 5 years now, design thinking has been a compulsory course for all our first years for the past 5 years. And so they take a whole semester of design thinking, design sprints, and then there's a 1 year entrepreneurship course, compulsory, everybody, doesn't matter your major. And half of it is design thinking, design sprints. I mean, the other half is more entrepreneurship. You give them small amounts of money, they go out, they start an operation on the idea that they use the design thinking methods to come up with. And David is here. David teaches on the program as well. Miss Abby also teaches on the program. Derry, I can't see Derry. Derry is also here. He's been a teaching assistant for many years and also took the course. Eugene also teaches in the program. And so we've seen a mindset shift. In fact, the first year when we launched design thinking in Ashesi, it disrupted a number of other courses, because there was a leadership course, for instance, where the faculty member said, the way I teach leadership is disrupted, because when I set up a prompt, the students completely dismantle it, you know, because their mindsets have changed, the way they approach problems have changed. I don't know about other schools, but we are hopeful that it starts to permeate. Very good question. Yeah. Other comments, questions, you know, new things you learned from the breakout rooms, anything you want to share with us, commitments you want to make before you go?
Yeah, for me, I just wanted to comment on one question that came up during the session, where one of the participants was asking, in the process of testing and prototyping, if you have any secondary prototype, if that falls or creates a bias for you in testing your new ideal solution, which I think for me as a facilitator, I had not yet considered it, but I was able to think through within that moment and say, yes, there are instances where maybe the ideal solution that you are bringing to the market actually has a prototype that is already existing. But the fact that you can still fall on the secondary prototype as a way to look out for what worked and what didn't work, and use the insight from that to actually create a new solution. So then you do not reinvent the wheel, but then you pick insights from the secondary or already existing prototype, and then use those insights to form now new ways or innovative approaches to bring your solution back to the market. So yes, sometimes when you're looking for primary data, you still fall on secondary data, and with that, you now say, okay, this information was not available, or this one worked, or prototype A worked in this way, and people responded to it in this particular way to the left. And now I'm using those insights to now come up with another solution, and then use this to create another prototype. B, where I'm expecting in testing and developing my hypothesis for the testing, I'm expecting that, okay, this number of respondents will give me this particular kind of response. So that was interesting to also think through and know that yes, there's also secondary prototyping that you can fall on as a basis for testing and prototyping.
That's very good, Joanna. Primary and secondary prototypes, learning from the first one, rebuilding on the second and the third, and so forth. Thank you so much. Fard Mohammed.
Hi, Doc. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I have 2 points. One is a question of what's the next stage? Some of us are students of Ashesi to benefit from the D Lab that you have there. So what opportunity is available for some of us to keep building our capabilities in design thinking, UX design, or user experience, among others? 2, and I think it's a point that the first speaker did mention, be teaching design thinking at the highest levels. What can we do as Ghana or Africa to inculcate or to incorporate design thinking and problem solving at the basic levels? Since most of our curriculums, especially at the university level, are of 19th century way of thinking. Thank you.
Very good question, Fard, but I think that's why we have design thinking Ghana, right? In fact, when we started work at Ashesi 5 years ago, design thinking Ghana was our answer to doing work in the community. We know how far Ashesi is, and we also know the limitations of being in a confined academic institution. And so so we started meetup groups. We had started meetup on the meetup.com app. Started doing monthly meetings. Today, Design Thinking Ghana is the largest meetup group on the meetup.com platform in Ghana. You know, so I think it's getting involved in what we're doing here to continue to have the process and the practice and the approach permeate beyond Ashesi. Yeah, so join us, follow us on social media, send us an email, get involved in our programs.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Others, insights, and I know. Okay. Yes, go for it.
Oh, yeah, okay. I just wanted to add quickly, you know, when Richard was also talking, and both Richard and Annie mentioned it, the fact that we are basically in a space where people are working across continents, across countries, therefore the need for collaboration. I think one of the major insights or with the use of design thinking is the fact that you're able to work across board from different teams, because here in Ghana, it comes across as a new way of thinking, but in other parts of the world, it's already being used, also fairly new, but yeah, it's being used rapidly. And therefore, if you find yourself in a space where you also have to work in global teams, design thinking is actually a very important skill that makes you you know, be able to work together across different teams, across continents, across different countries. So it's important that you also familiarize yourself with the process and then make yourself a valuable skill or a valuable person as a team player when you find yourself in such a space, because we are basically globalizing in a very fast pace right now. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and I just also want to make a quick note. Joanna is the coordinator for Ghana Design Network, which has Dutch roots, and I just wanted to make the connection as well that for most of the innovation entrepreneurship programs that we're seeing from the development agencies, GIZ, SNV, and so forth, almost all of them require design thinking now. Okay, almost all of them, and so it's becoming mainstream, and so we really need to double up in making the process very. You know, the joke is that it has to become the new Excel. You know how you used to put Excel on your resume as a skill, right? Now you have to start putting design thinking. You know, so that's a really good point to make. Let's go to Derry and then Adino.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on making design thinking come down to everybody and everyday life, which is one of the points that the second speaker made concerning democratizing design thinking. And it took me back to the first internship that I did, where basically trying to incorporate design thinking into the farm practices of a group of cocoa farmers in Suhum. And I found it really powerful because at the end of the internship period, we got these farmers to redesign their harvest tools. So they had a sickle with retractable handles to enable them harvest both low-hanging and low-hanging cocoa pods and the ones high up on the tree, and also to try and think about how they can design their drying mats to enable them dry their cocoa beans regardless of the weather that they are facing. And one thing that we noticed, as the speaker mentioned, is that we didn't really go in with all the difficult terms. We didn't even mention design thinking at any point of the workshop that we had. We just used everyday life scenarios. We took them on a tour on their farms. We asked them to talk about their own problems in ways that they understand and appreciate them. And then we made them explore those problems and brainstorm, and realize that they can be as creative as we, those who have gotten the chance to be educated in the universities and other places. We just have to find the best ways to communicate to them. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
That's wonderful. Very practical example there. I think we probably will end with Adino. So Adino, make it good.
And real quick, Dr. Gordon. So my point was actually like Derry's. I was just referring to what Richard Perez said, that in as much as we know what we are doing, we might need to introduce some subtlety to it. Because if we should go with what may sound like jargon and industry or sector terms, we might not make as big and as useful an impact. And I'm saying this because in some of the breakouts, there was so much silence, and I have a feeling that it's as if there was too much information to take in at the beginning. And so just a word of maybe caution that we might need to be more subtle. As determined and as intentional as we want to be, we might need to be subtle and persistent in order to create the kind of critical mass we are looking to create. Thank you.
Thank you, Adina. That's wonderful. Very, very important points there. Being subtle, yet, you know, I think Annie also made that point, right? Connect with yourself so that you know how to connect with others, you know. David, I think I see you on. I don't know if you want to say something before we close. I know you're driving, but.
Oh, yeah, thanks. So it's been interesting hearing, you know, a lot of the questions that have been coming up, and particularly the ones about how do we take design thinking down to the ground level, right? And I think it's important to notice or to take into consideration that part of the kind of development of design thinking, it finds a lot of its roots in what was going on in the Scandinavian countries, you know, in the 60s, when they kind of developed participatory design, where basically you work with the people who you are, who have the issue that you're trying to address. You work with them and help them to develop the problems that, to develop the solutions to the problems that they are facing. And so at its core and in its history, design thinking has always, in some ways, been very grassroots. It's been about working at a solution with the people involved in the context of the problem. And so, as Anne said, in terms of connecting with ourselves, and as some of you have mentioned, you know, in terms of theory and practice, it's there, or it's design thinking is set up to allow us to engage in that sort of participatory way. And so, at the end of the day, the way we get it down there is by actually us getting into those communities, searching for those problems. And I think a key point that Richard also mentioned in his talk is framing those problems, right? Because I think a lot of the ways in which sometimes we make it difficult to translate design thinking or have people pick it up is that we go in and either jump directly into solutions, or that we do not frame the problem in a way that involves them. And as such, it becomes almost like a consultancy where, you know, you go in and you do what you do and you leave, and there's nothing left, or there's not that practice or mindset change within either the community or the organization that you've gone into. But I think it's important to notice that one, participatory design has been part of design thinking, and it's a great way of beginning to disseminate and bring design thinking to the ground. But it's also very dependent on us to go in there and also to, I guess, to put it in maybe a cheesy way, to empathize in the right way, right? To empathize to a point where we frame the problems from the context of the people, so that they are more incentivized to take part in the process, and as a result, also have that mindset shift in terms of the understanding of their capacity to use design thinking to solve the problem.
Very good point. Very, very deep points there, right? And what's more interesting is how COVID allows us to pause and rethink all of these things. So thank you there, David, and thank you for moderating for us earlier on. With great programs like this, there's always the people behind who make everything work, right? You will not believe how many people are working behind the scenes right now to, you know, make all of this come together. We won't be able to thank everybody, but the very core team, you know, Ifia Sewa Usu Setre, we call Coordinator General, you know, people like Rosina, Nab, David himself, Abby Engman, and then our facilitators, and our volunteers as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Ifia to thank our partners, and then we can wrap it up.
Hello, everyone. I think it's been a good day so far. I would like to first of all say a very big thank you to everyone that has stayed on to this time, though we are like 18 minutes past the time that we had scheduled. So thank you all so much. And our biggest appreciation goes to our volunteers, you know, both from Ashesi D Lab and Hoja Africa. Like they are just doing so much backdoor that in terms of capturing content and all of that, so much pressure on them, but they are able to deliver. So we are so grateful to them. Also to our presenters, that's our facilitators and support facilitators. We couldn't have done this without you, really. Like the late night practice and all of that. We are so grateful for you making the time to do this with us. We really, really appreciate your effort and everything that you've put in to make this program a success. Yeah, and also to the big boss, that's Dr. Gordon. We are really grateful for his support so far, right? He's behind the scenes as well, you know, making things happen and all of that. So thank you, Dr. Gordon. And at this juncture, I'd like to also thank our sponsors. That's MTN for sponsoring us with data, J4 Designs, Koshi Designs, what do you call it? Chosen Solutions, Web Designs. Then to our partners, a share CD lab, D School, and the others, and Design Thinkers Group. Really, that's by Ivy. So yes, we are so grateful to everyone that contributed to make this program a success. Really, we are grateful, and we can't wait to have you on next year. To share another insightful, content and all of that. So thank you. We are most grateful to all of you.
All right, very well said. Please look out for our programming. We try to do a monthly program on design thinking. Now the world has changed. We've learned a lot. The team has been talking about what we do next. So if you have ideas, hit us up on social media as well. We'd love to work with you. So without much ado, we'll say thank you, and we're just gonna leave our video on playing, and we will see you again soon. Thank you so much.
I've been attending design thinking sessions for about 3 years now, and what struck me the most about design thinking was its applicability in everything. Because initially I thought it was just something for business and tech solutions, but I realized you can apply it to every aspect of your life, and it's amazing because it allows you to think of practical solutions. Because usually we talk about creativity and we don't realize how creativity is only useful when you can use it to solve problems, and design thinking allows you to solve problems with creativity, and I think that is exactly why I've been hooked onto it for this long.
My name is Kelvin Porte, and I'm a facilitator in training at Design Thinking Ghana Hub. For the past 3 years, I've been with Design Thinking Ghana Hub, and the main focus has been how to find human-centered solutions to problems that exist within our communities. At the same time, helping startups and helping organizations develop solutions like this.
My name is Isaac Newton Aqua, and I'm the accelerator lead for the Accelerator Factory. Last weekend, we had a first sprint where we had different facilitators, including one from Design Thinking Ghana. And they managed in a very short session to bring the design thinking and human-centered design to our startups and get to understand the benefits of getting close to their customers. In just one session, the startups are already understanding the benefits of having the customers at the heart of the decisions and literally building for the customers with them in mind. So we're thankful for Design Thinking Ghana for their time and their excellence, and we know the startups will benefit greatly from their sessions they had with them.
We started doing consulting projects, doing training programs, and we're excited to have clients, very scary, to have clients here that we've provided training programs to. We've done some consulting, new product development consulting projects as well. So we're excited that we've got this level of reception, if you will, in the space. Design thinking is still new, but it's still growing. Today we get a lot more requests for workshops and programs than we can fill. We've done training to about 200 people every year. Here it is 120, so definitely more than 200 a year. We didn't do 200 in the first 2 years, so you know, but we're close to 1,000, so that's fantastic.